Good evening, everyone. I hope you are all well. Now, for those of you who didn't watch it, it was Keir Starmer's first King's Speech, the first one of his government, and it was the longest King's Speech since 2003. And spoiler alert, things are not looking good. We are talking more red tape, bigger government, and utter chaos because business and the country will grind to a halt. But there are also quite a few sinister things that have been slipped in, which could effectively at some point be used in a manner that would benefit the government and for individuals to lose out. Now, there's a surprise, isn't there? So, what do we have? Well, taking a look at all of the points, for example, he's decided to revive Sunak's smoking ban, which is going to effectively, progressively increase the age of the minimum age for buying tobacco, which will at some point mean that in the not too distant future, or in most people's lifetimes, there'll be there will be a situation where somebody who's 38 years old will be stood outside the shop asking somebody who's 39 to go in and buy cigarettes for them. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Um, they're talking about cracking down on vapes marketed to children, which I do agree with that. It has been discussed for quite a while now, and yes, obviously, vapes shouldn't be marketed at children. So whatever is right, of course, we must accept that and acknowledge it. They're meddling with football. I really don't know why, but they're going to establish a new football regulator to ensure the financial stability of clubs, and fans will have a greater say in how they are run. And apparently, under the plans or reforms, professional clubs will need a license to operate, and they will also need to seek permission from fans to change their home shirt colours and get the watchdog approval to sell their stadium or relocate. I'm not a big football fan, so I'm not sure how that goes down with fans. Moving on, conversion therapy. They want to ban conversion therapy. Uh, I wasn't really certain what this actually meant, but the implications here are really bad. Effectively, if somebody, a youngster, a child, is adamant that they want to be the opposite sex, that they cannot be referred for therapy. So uh, it's almost as though that any ideas that go through a child's mind must be respected and they cannot have any treatment. This is just getting from bad to worse. But the real sinister part is that parents could face prosecution for trying to actually uh, talk their children of uh, out of thinking that they are trans. I mean, I don't know where all this is going. It's just absolutely ridiculous. Border security. Keir Starmer's going to smash the gangs and stop the boats. Uh, yes. Any of you actually believe that? Uh, if anything, they'll probably just be coming over legally. I've said this before. He's desperate to go and get in Ursula von der Leyen's good books. That's assuming that she doesn't get thrown out this week. But he's desperate to make a deal with the EU, and guaranteed part of that will be for us to take a quota of their migrants as well. So I would imagine that they may slow down coming over by boat because they'll be coming over on the ferry. And I do believe that they will at some point, as part of a new deal with the EU, they may very well sign up to free movement of people within Europe. I really hope that they don't. It's nothing against the people of Europe. It is purely about logistics, and we have enough pressure as it is. But the one that's really worrying me is that if we have free movement within Europe, then what's to stop the other European countries, southern European countries, just literally granting asylum to everyone they want, and then just saying, you've got a passport now, you can head off and you can go to France, Germany, or even the UK because you're a European citizen. And those who come in that manner will be deemed to be just European citizens. They won't be asylum seekers, even though the chances are they'll arrive here and all they'll do is claim benefits. But that's just me being cynical, of course, isn't it? Uh, Equality, more equality. So race is planned to be on the same footing as sex in equal pay claims to create a more equal society. So effectively, under the reforms, ethnic minorities and disabled people will have a full right to equal pay enshrined in law, bringing their legal protections on par with those of women. Uh, Anybody here, anybody who doesn't think that this is just going to create a load more litigation and force our legal judicial system to grind to a halt, although it's effectively not far off that as it is. Then we have the Renters' Rights Bill to abolish Section 21 no fault evictions and empower tenants to challenge rent increases designed to force them out by the back door. Uh, yes, you can have caps on how much rents are put up each year. However, the Section 21 is a difficult one. I do believe that tenancies should be for longer. The problem is, or the reason that they're not, is normally down to the lenders, because most buy to let lenders stipulate a 12-month contract. I don't really see any problem with giving people longer contracts and having a minimum term for them as well. If you are aware of Michael Gove's levelling up nonsense, it was open ended tenancy, but the tenant could give 2 months' notice at any time. So a landlord could go to all the trouble and expense of renting a property out, thinking that the tenant's going to be there for 1 or 2 years. And literally, as soon as the tenant gets the keys and moves in, they can give 2 months' notice. And there's nothing the landlord can do. On the other hand, so there should be a minimum term, really. On the other hand, there's no reason for longer leases to be made more practical, and that needs to start as much with the lenders. I appreciate that there are landlords out there who are very greedy and they just evict tenants because they can then re-rent at a much higher price that they wouldn't be able to get from their existing tenants. But I really don't think that just putting people who rent out a property in a situation where they cannot reclaim that property, recover it, is not the way forward. The short hold tenancy was introduced in '88 to create a mobile workforce, not just for people who don't own homes to be able to move to different parts of the country and rent, but perhaps people who owned a home in one part of the country and got a job in a different part could rent out their home, move to another city, to a new job, and rent a home there. And then when they decided to move back, they could recover their home. Now, will there be provision for people who have rented out their home in that situation? Because they haven't, it hasn't all been mentioned here, but if you actually look through some of their plans, they're also resurrecting, Corbyn's plan to allow tenants the right to buy of a private property, meaning that if you rent your property to a tenant and you want them out, the court may suggest or order that you sell it to them rather than evict them. This is going to be a nightmare. Then we've got some other plans, free breakfast clubs, and this one I don't like. Academies will be required to teach the national curriculum, bringing them in line with maintained schools. Why should they do that? Why are they obsessed that one size fits all? That is completely wrong. And those who suffer are the children, because there are children who have different skill sets. I'm of the opinion that children should be able to start apprenticeships at 14 years old if they have the aptitude for it. Why should they be forced to endure mainstream education that they may very well be really unhappy with until they're 18? And by the time they're 18, they may be so sick and tired of academia that they actually don't go to college to learn to be an electrician or an engineer or something else. Why not assess children on a case by case basis and offer them opportunities based on their skill set and their aptitude? Um, Workers' rights. Now, although this may seem a good thing, it's going to be catastrophic. Yes, they're talking about banning 0 hours contracts and ending the practice known as fire and rehire, and extend flexible working, forcing employers to fit around their employees. Now, there's two sides to this. There's the small business side, which can't fit around employees because they don't have many of them. There is also further down. They're going to give employees full rights, parental leave, and sick pay from day one. Now, that's one thing for a big corporation, but what about a small business with just a handful of employees? What happens if they take somebody on and the day after they decide that they announce that they want to go on parental leave, and you have to hold their job for them, and you have to pay a certain amount. They don't get everything. They don't get everything from the government. You have to pay and claim it back, but you don't get all of it. So it's costing you. What does the small employer do then? Because one person less may be detrimental to their business, and they need someone else. And then they'd be petrified. What if I take a second person and the same thing happens, or I'm stuck with them? This is horrendous. And for bigger business, all that will happen is they will gradually move more of their operations overseas. This doesn't help anyone. Rail companies will be brought back into public ownership. Well, the railways are actually owned by the public anyway. It is the trains that are run privately, but history tells us that that does not improve things. It actually makes things worse. How that will go, I will never know. Um, they are also creating or going to introduce a fiscal lock. All future budgets must be subject to an independent assessment by the Office for Budget Responsibility. Now, the OBR has never got anything right, and since it was introduced under Dave Cameron, they are hundreds of millions of pounds off kilter, and yet this guy is committing future budgets to actually be subject to an independent assessment by this bunch of clowns. That is absolutely catastrophic. And even though we all know that Liz Truss and her famous budget was a bit gun ho, it was with the best of intentions. However, having said that, it was this obsession with the fact that it had not been looked through by the OBR, in addition to Andrew Bailey sparking off a bond sale the night before, that contributed to the mayhem following the budget. Um, it, this is not going to be very good at all. Um, Pensions. Well, I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't believe what we've been told today. I do have a feel that they are looking into a tax raid on pensions. That remains to be seen. Now we move to Palestine. In the King's speech, Labour says it is committed to a two-state solution in the Middle East. And Sir Keir has previously said that recognising Palestine needs to be part of the process. I don't understand how they can recognise a state that doesn't exist. And also, with regards to a two-state solution, um, perhaps they need to look at the 1922 British Mandate for Palestine to see that the region of the Middle East, referred to as Palestine, was a huge area. It was huge. And the best part, the largest part of that was actually the area that formed Jordan. Jordan was Palestine for the Arabs. It is only, keep in mind, there was no such race as Jordanians or Saudis, there were just tribes. However, there were certain tribes who behaved so badly in Jordan that the king threw them out in 1970, about 300,000 of them. By that point, they had formed the PLO under Yasser Arafat, and in the following year, they assassinated the Jordanian prime minister before they then moved on to Lebanon to destabilize that. Um, I think that our leaders need to actually take a few history lessons. But there you go. Um, National security. A Hillsborough law will place all public servants and authorities under a legal duty of candour, requiring them to tell the truth to inquiries, investigations, and public inquiries. I thought that was the case anyway, didn't you? And the House of Lords bill. Yes, they are going to remove 100 hereditary peers, although Keir Starmer has toned it down a bit, and a couple of the older peers who happen to be related to the king are not going to be removed, despite the fact that one of them is in his 90s. But there you go. Crime and policing, revamped form of ASPOS will give powers to place restrictions on adults to tackle antisocial behaviour. Well, we do have um, a lot of tools, or the courts do have a lot of tools at their disposal, but there doesn't seem to be the will to enforce them. So we shall see. Um, Planning is just going to go to pot, and actually, all of this planned building on greenbelt land will be catastrophic, because not only are they planning to just literally just build everywhere, and probably there will be monstrosities knowing how Labour have always traditionally built. Um, they are also going to start interfering with the compulsory purchase orders to make them far more reasonable. How is that going to be defined? And is that the thin end of the wedge? In other words, we know that they're putting farmers out of business. We know that Boris signed an agreement to set aside 30% of farmland to grow flowers on and be taken out of food production. The National Trust, which owns lots of land that it rents to farmers, is throwing farmers off and then planting flowers or whatever they are on the land. We're losing hundreds of thousands of acres to solar farms and wind farms. Will the compulsory purchase orders cover uh, development for solar and wind farms? And if so, is that an indirect way for the government to just be able to just approach a farm and compulsory purchase a big part of that farm with the intention of using it as a solar farm to put the farmer out of business, because what they are doing is intended to just bankrupt our farmers and control our food supply. There is no other explanation for this madness. All in all, this does not look good. It does not bode well. I feel that this will have sinister implications. Bigger government, everything's going to grind to a halt, and we haven't seen the unions appear yet, and they will. Not to mention the fact that the far left within the Labour Party, who are in larger numbers now because they have such a big majority, are increasingly a threat. So what have we got here? The Foxy Lady, good evening. What did Trump state yesterday? I'm not sure. What are you referring to? Was this in his meeting with Boris or with something else? Because there's been a lot coming from over there, so I don't know in particular what you're referring to. So perhaps if you'd give me a clue, then I could help. But in the meantime, as I said, I think that this is a worrying, very worrying King's speech. And to be honest, I think it indicates that this bunch of clowns are going to be very, very damaging to our country. I believe that they won't solve the housing problem. And as I said in another video, we don't have a housing crisis. We have a population crisis. We need to control all of these people who are flooding into our country and taking front place for housing. I believe I noted the figures for the video I did. I believe that in social housing, I believe about 46 or 47% of social housing in London, the head of the household was born outside the UK, and in private rented accommodation, it is 67%. We have capacity for many homes. We've got 670,000 empty in England just to start with. We do have capacity for the people who are here, but we can't keep allowing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people a year to come to this country and then they go to the front of the queue. And if they do build these 1.5 million homes, which I'm not sure how they're going to manage it, but if they do, then don't expect people like who already live here to be able to have access to them. The vast majority are going to be handed over to people who arrive here because they're going to be deemed priority, and people who live here actually don't really matter. All in all, it's absolutely disgraceful. Anyway, that's all for now. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any questions, suggestions, anything you'd like to ask, or anything you'd like to cover, please feel free to get in touch anytime, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.